Right, well, hello and welcome to everyone who's watching this at home. I'm Wendy Wilson-Bett and I'm co-founder of Peter's Yard, and I'm delighted to be joined by Edward Hancock, who is the founder of online cheese specialist, The Cheese Geek. So today we're going to share our favourite British cheese selection, and we're going to pair those with some of our crackers and also some absolutely delicious honey. We would really love you to join along with us. If you happen to have sent off for the box beforehand, then please try along live with us. And if you have got any comments, then just drop them in the comments box, because we'd really love to know what you think. So Edward, thanks so much for joining me today.
Great to be here.
Could you tell me a little bit about where your love of cheese came from?
Yeah. I mean, we, confined to 30 minutes. I won't do the full version because we'll be here today. But really since 11, my first experience of fine dining in France, I have to say it was in France. And it sort of sowed the seed. The cheese trolley came over and I just thought, wow, this is incredible. The sight of the trolley and the variation of cheese. And I'd never really come across anything like that in the UK. And I think that sort of was in there for many years until eventually it got to the point where I just thought, well, I think it's time that I try to do something here. I think the thing I always say to people is that we have over 750 varieties of cheese now being made in the UK.
Wow.
But if you ask the average person off the street to name as many as they could, we'd probably talking around 1% of that.
Yeah.
So I guess that was really my main motivation, was to try and, narrow that gap in people's knowledge of what's happening, because we make just great cheese, and these three are three great examples of fantastic cheese that we're making, that I just want people to have the opportunity to eat as regularly as they can or want, really.
Well, I agree with you about that cheese board moment when a waiter brings in this trolley and you just think, like a kid in a sweet shop.
Yeah, there's nothing quite like it. There's not many other things quite like cheese. There's an entire industry devoted to cheese puns, which gives you some idea of how much emotion cheese can elicit from people. But it's just a great thing to work with and a great thing to get people excited about.
No, I totally agree. And actually, the thing which I think we as a team, Peter's Yard, feel is so much in common with cheesemakers is you just take a few humble ingredients, add some time, fermentation, and you can have such a variety. I mean, if you think of all the different flavors and colors and textures of cheese from such simple ingredients. Exactly.
I mean, even just today, these three on our cheese board, we've got, the poacher, the Tunworth and the Northern Blue. They all start from those four key ingredients, which is, the milk, starter culture, rennet and salt. And I think what's amazing, and we'll probably come on to this, but with Peter's Yards, your crackers and your crisp breads, I think, there's such a parallel there, because I think your ingredients are, as well as the time, it's the milk or butter, and then starter cultures as well, and salt.
Flour and salt. That's it.
Flour and salt.
Yeah. No, it's there's a lot of similarities, I think. So what makes a really good cheese board for you?
Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, probably two of the most common questions I get asked are, what makes a perfect cheese board and what should I have with my cheese? Right. And I think, in terms of perfect cheese board, the main trap people fall into is having to have loads and loads and loads of cheese, as many types as possible, 10, 12, especially at Christmas. And your palate's just going to get blown out of the water. It's very overwhelming. So I think 3 to 5 cheeses is usually a good amount. And we're just looking to cover a good sort of range of styles. So here we've got our sort of nice, mature, hard cheese, a lovely soft cheese, and then a blue cheese. And I think that's just showcasing a kind of smaller but differentiated group of cheeses is a great way to go. And I think it really allows you to hone in on what you're tasting and to let your palate kind of have a chance of really experiencing all 3 or all 5. And so I think that's my answer to a balanced cheese board. It's and the order is also so important. If we started with the blue, this evening and moved in the other direction, you'd sort of you struggle to pick up some of the nuances in the poacher, for example. So having your sort of harder cheeses first is really important, moving into the soft cheeses, which tend to have slightly more lingering flavors. And then the blue cheese, which is just a stronger cheese, full stop. You want to leave that till the end. And, the question of what to have with your cheese, well, I do always say to people, try each cheese that you try for the first time on its own first, because it really gets you to pick up on some of those subtleties. But beyond that, you'll know, Wendy, full well that since I set up the business, we've almost exclusively used Peter's Yard. And that was my own choice. That's there's nothing more to it than that. I've always felt that they're just perfect for cheese. I think they have a bit of everything when you're looking at pairing with cheese. They do carry obviously flavor, but not overpowering flavor and not flavors that are going to take over from the cheese. They work with the cheese. They've got the right flavors. So there's a bit of yeastiness, which really cuts through the creaminess of cheese. The crispiness is just wonderful in terms of a textural thing. But then at the end, you're not left with a doughiness. It's not claggy. It's not residual. It just, melts away. It vanishes. And then you're ready to go again.
Yeah, I must say ever since it was some years ago, the Great Taste Awards very kindly named us the best biscuit for cheese out there. And it really got us thinking, what is the best biscuit for cheese or the best biscuits for cheese? And we said, actually, it's about complementing the cheese, but letting the cheese be the hero.
Yeah.
So let that do the talking. It's almost like the straight man in a double act. So we've always had that in the back of our minds, that we really, are not trying to take the limelight. We're trying to shine the limelight on the cheese. Yeah,
absolutely. But I think to go one step further than that, I think the other thing, and we talk about this when we talk about wine pairing as well with cheese, is that yes, the pairing is key, but I'll sometimes sit there and just eat a Peter's Yard crisp bread as well, or a cracker, just before or after I've been eating the cheese. It's got to taste good on its own as well.
True. Yeah.
And I think, that's the key thing. It's like with wine and cheese as well. It's all very well having a nice pairing, but you don't want the wine to taste horrid when it's on its own. And so I think, again, that's why I just really enjoy the product. And I think it works so well, because when you might have had enough cheese, and I say that very loosely speaking,
Does that happen?
I've not yet felt that experience. I am told that normal people do. But, there might be a moment where you just need something other than cheese. And I think, picking up one of these because it's lying around on your cheese board, it's going to be delightful in itself. So, and I'm looking forward to talking a bit more in detail about each one and why they work with each cheese.
Shall we crack on and do that then? Shall we try the first pairing, which is the Vintage Poacher?
The Vintage Poacher, and the original. I'll talk a little bit about.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So we've got three. I mean, the kind of general theme here is we're not trying to reinvent the wheel in terms of we've got three really classic style cheeses here. The blue cheese maybe slightly less so, but three very familiar looking cheeses. It's that kind of stereotypical cheddar, brie, Stilton thing that people are familiar with and will kind of find accessible. But we've played around with it slightly, and all of these cheeses have a bit of a twist. So the Poacher is our cheddar style cheese, but Poacher's made by Simon Jones, and his brother Tim also works at Poacher in terms of more on the business side of things. So it's a kind of brother team. And Lincolnshire Poacher is a cheddar style cheese, but it's intermingled or borrows some techniques from Comté. And I think that's what makes this cheese a little bit more than just a cheddar style cheese. It's what gives it that little bit of something different. It's hopefully anyone following along is already tucking into the cheese. But I think what you'll notice is it's got that farminess that you get from a mature cheddar. This is a vintage Poacher, so it's aged even slightly longer than a standard Poacher. And it's got that farmy, cheddary tang. You're eating a cheddar-style cheese, but then what you get after that, I find, is just such a beautiful, buttery, smooth finish. You're not left with too much of a lingering cheddar tang, which some people might like, but for me, I just love the buttery, nutty finish that you get that reminds you that there is a Comté influence here. And I just think it works so nicely with the original crisp bread as well. I'm going to have a taste now.
Me
actually.
too.
So I'm going to need you to talk a little bit.
I'll talk while you try. But I agree. I've had this just before we met up, and I think that the sort of combination of the strength of this cheese and the sourdough, and also, as you say, there's nuttiness in the Vintage Poacher, but also rye is often described as malty. And I just think those two things go really beautifully together. But also, of all of our crackers, some are a little harder, some are a little softer, and this is quite hard and crisp. It's got a kind of signature crunch, and I think that goes beautifully with the firmness and the kind of crystals that you get in this harder cheese.
Absolutely, and I think we've sort of spoken about this in the past, that one of the really pleasurable things about a nice hard mature cheese is when you do get those crystals, just it gives you that textural level of interest. I mean, It's not necessarily about bringing lots of flavor, but, you know, it's giving you a bit of a crunch. It's something different and it's something interesting. And I think that's what the crisp bread brings in as well. I think this is the most crispy, or the crispiest of the crisp breads. And I think that works nicely. You want that. But it just seems to, you know, and you're right, that maltiness kind of blends in with a slightly more mature flavor, the sort of umami you're starting to get, that earthiness, the richness from the poach, because it's a vintage, marries in with that maltiness. And that, again, that slight yeastiness and the slight bitterness just cuts through the creaminess of the cheese, and it just works. They just work very well together.
No, I agree. We do say that of all of our crisp breads, the original is this one, and it really is the most versatile. So it can work with pretty much any cheese. But I think in this selection, this British cheese board selection that we've put together, I think it works beautifully with the poacher.
Yeah, and it's a good point actually you make. You know, do cross match and cross pair. I mean, you know, try the original with the other cheeses and switch it all around. I mean, this is just what we quite like. But you know, they're all pretty good, I must say.
Let us know in those comments, and we're really interested in your feedback.
Yeah, exactly. And hopefully at the end now you've got quite a clean finish. I think that's what's quite important, is that you're not looking to have that sort of doughiness or much residual flavor. You just want that nice clean nice finish, and you're ready to go again and have another bite.
I think that's really interesting, because some of the most neutral crackers on the market may be very, very neutral in flavor, but I don't find them neutral in terms of what's left in your mouth. You want that cleanness, you want it just to disappear, ready for the next bite. Yeah.
And also the other thing I'd say is that any flavor that is left before it completely dissipates, you're not 100% sure whether it's the cheese or the crisp bread, which again is what you want.
Yeah, that's true.
You're picking up certain things, you're like, oh, is that the poacher? No, I think that might be the
sourdough.
Sourdough, and it's not, and that's how it should be. You shouldn't be thinking, oh, all I can taste now is the crisp bread or the cracker. I mean, maybe it's a little bit better if you're only tasting the cheese, if there has to be one or the other. But I mean, I think nice here is that it's a bit of both, which is good.
I agree. So should we move to the second one?
Yeah, let's move on to the second one. So this is, I mean, this really is one of my favorite cheeses, actually, made by Stacey Hedges at Hampshire Cheeses. It's Tunworth, and it's made in the style of a Camembert. And I think one of the reasons I get really excited about this cheese is that, you know, despite how great things are doing, you know, how well we're doing in the UK making cheese, making British cheese, it's a long way. We've got a long way to go until people around the world associate great cheese with the UK.
I agree.
France is just so far ahead.
Yeah.
And so when you get a cheese that comes along that you can say, this is clearly a version of a French cheese, but find that it's as good, if not better, that's particularly exciting. And then what makes it even more exciting is when a famous French chef also agrees that it's the best Camembert in the world, which is what Raymond Blanc said. And who am I to disagree with Raymond Blanc, to be quite honest?
Not me.
So this is a Camembert style cheese made by Stacey, and I think it's just stunning. I think it's a stunning cheese. It's got everything you want from a Camembert style cheese. Again, I must keep saying it's a Camembert style cheese.
Yeah.
It's got those mushroomy notes in the rind. It's got that sort of slight earthiness. I kind of equate it sometimes to damp leaves or cabbage. Some people get a cabbage bitterness, but then towards the center, it's more creamy. It's still got a lactic sort of vibe going on, and often you'll still get a chalky center. Some people like their cheese gooey all the way through. It's just personal preference, but I always quite like it when you have a bit of a chalky center still left, because I think again it's that textural difference, and it means that you're going to get more differentiated flavor as well. And we pair this with the truffle honey. If you've gone for the truffle honey, if you're listening and you went for that, this is hopefully the moment that you were rewarded for that decision, because I think this truffle honey just brings out all of those flavors inside the cheese. And Wendy, you must talk a bit more about these charcoal crisp crackers. I have to say, personally, from my perspective, these are your favorite, are they? Maybe. Tell us a bit more about, because there's some differences in the recipe that work.
There are, yeah. So I will, while you try that, and then I'll make sure I try it as well. So these are the charcoal crackers. And I must say, actually, that the contrast of the colour is what I love here. So if you are trying to look for something that pairs with a goat's cheese or a light coloured cheese, the charcoal works really well. And so this basically is a recipe which is a tiny bit softer than the original. So that works, I think, really nicely with a slightly softer cheese as well. And it's softer because it has butter in it. And I think the Tunworth is so buttery. The other thing that I love is that this we do use honey in our recipes, and then the complementary nature of your selected truffle honey just sort of brings out all of the flavors of the crisp bread and the cheese. So I think it's really stunning in terms of the complementary nature of the taste, but also the look. So if you're looking for something with a bit of wow on a cheese board, this product certainly sort of does that with the contrast of the white and the black.
Absolutely. And people always ask me, do I have my cheese before dessert, or do I have dessert before cheese? And I always say I have cheese before the meal. I have cheese first. And people look at me like I'm crazy, and yeah, I probably am a bit crazy, but I think the kind of combination that's going to get people trying their cheese before a meal, it's got to feel a little bit like a canapé, or a little bit like a treat, a little mouthful of something special. Something like this is where you'd want to do that, just before that meal, to get the taste buds moving, to get things happening. You're hungry. Most of us eat cheese when we're already full, usually at Christmas when we had just had the biggest meal of the year. But imagine this before a meal. You've got that piece of Tunworth, the butteriness, the richness, the bitter notes, and then that truffle honey coming through the sweetness, but also picking up on the earthy mushroom vibe with the truffle, and then that buttery cracker. It's just an absolute joy to behold. It's such a treat. It's such a treat, and it should be eaten when you're hungry.
Yeah, that's very true.
Why not?
That's so true. And I hope anybody who is trying it has the additional benefit, which nobody else can tell if they're not, of the smell, because the lovely smell of the Tunworth and the truffle is gorgeous. And again, as you say, if you smelt that ahead of a meal, it would really get your appetite going.
And as you rightly say, Wendy, it's got the visuals as well. You want it to look special. It's very well saying I'll eat a bit of cheese before a meal, but it's the colors, it's the contrast of the light on the black. It just looks stunning. I just think this is great. And I just thought it was so interesting, actually, when you were telling me about the fact you use butter in this recipe and the honey. It was one of those classic moments where I sort of knew there was something different, but when you told me, immediately it was like that eureka moment where I was like, yes, I can taste that. I can taste the butter. I can taste, and it's that extra richness, but also it's not quite as crispy. It's slightly softer, which I just think feeds into it. It's like a warm velvet cushion that's just making the soft cheese even more luxurious and velvety. It's just decadent. It's a real treat. I should say, actually, because we've put together the selection, which is called the Pita, which you can get on the Cheese Geek's website or also on ours. And what I love is that you put the little sort of number on here, and then we've got the tasting notes that go with it. So for anybody who's busily writing notes, there's no need if you get the set, because it's all there for you. And it's that the numbers there is, again, it's going back to the importance of the order here, because you can imagine having this now and then maybe the blue cheese. If you went back to the first pairing, it just wouldn't quite be as good, because so much more is happening now in terms of complexity and big bold flavors. So you're right. So I can't wait for the blue. The blue. So here we go. I think it's time. And incidentally, we talked a bit earlier about cross pairing. I wouldn't want to put you off trying some of the truffle honey with the blue cheese, because it's also rather nice. I did it by mistake. I have to confess, when we talked about this, Wendy, the other week, I actually used the wrong knife to cut my blue cheese. I'd used the truffle honey. I'd used that knife for truffle honey. And so it's sort of by sheer chance, serendipity. That's just luck, That's luck. But, maybe I've earned my luck over the years. I don't know. But the truffle honey works really nicely with blue cheese. But anyway, this is Northern Blue. And, this probably moves slightly further than the Poacher and the Tunworth from your classic style. So this might, on a very classic cheese board, might be a Stilton style cheese. Northern Blue is not a Stilton style cheese, but it kind of has a similar look to it. But it's made by Shepherd's Purse in North Yorkshire, and they are very much blue cheese specialists. You know, when you see a blue cheese made by them, it's almost immediately a kind of stamp of kind of credibility. You know, it's probably going to be pretty decent cheese. And I think what really, for me, what makes their cheeses so great and so delicious, and why I always kind of enjoy sharing them with people, is because for me, a blue cheese, the analogy I always use is, for me, a blue cheese should be an orchestra, not a solo act. Many blue cheeses, all you're getting is the blue. It's the saltiness, the minerality, and that's really what you're getting. And some people love that, but some people don't like that. With a cheese like this, which is first cheeses in general, it's an orchestra. So you're getting the blue, you're not hiding it, but it's so creamy as well. And you're getting the flavor of the milk, which I think is so important. And you can work with that. And that's where you can play around with flavor, and you can play around with pairings, because there's so much more going on than just the single dimensional blue veining. And that is something that ties in again with Peter's Yard and the crackers and crisp breads, because what is required for a great blue cheese is actually time. Unlike soft cheese and hard cheese, which get more stronger or more robust with age, blue cheese actually, when guided correctly, it actually mellows with age, and it develops more complex flavor and softer flavor, more mellow flavor, fruitiness. And I think that's what you get again with Shepherd's Purse cheese, because they give the cheese the time to express itself. But we're going to have this with a fig and spelt, which taken in isolation, I think are probably my favorite of your crisp breads or crackers.
Right, good. Well, yeah. Well, while you try that, I'll just say a little bit about the time, actually, because we do love taking time as well as choosing simple, good ingredients. So everything that we make has a sourdough starter, and actually that's 45 years old. So lots and lots of similarities with a cheesemaker who's bringing in a culture to make the cheese taste great. We're the same. And that starter ferments for 16 hours before any of our crisp breads or crackers are made. And as you say, that for us, we just know that that does a few things. It really makes the flavour develop, but it also gives us these little sort of bubbles and the irregular nature of the product, which we love. We kind of call it baked to imperfection, because we don't want everything to look the same. This isn't about a cookie cutter. This is about bakers using their skill, using their judgment, using their eye, hand baking, and they'll take them out and check them to check that they're just the right color, just the right look, just the right texture, and they'll break them and check that we've got the little layers and bubbles that are within it. And the nice thing about this particular one, which is our fig crisp bread made with spelt flour, and it's also got some sea salt and milk rather than butter for this one, but you can probably see there's little whole fig pieces as well. And that sweetness that comes from those fig pieces just, I think, works beautifully with any salty blue. But I actually think the pairing here is absolutely beautiful. And I will try it with some truffle honey afterwards as well.
No, you're right. It's that fig that, you know, fig pear, quite classic suggestions for blue cheese, because they do work away on the blue veining. You know, they do start to kind of round the edges of the saltiness. Like I say, to the effect that it's not just all about the blue. It allows other flavor to emerge and to express itself and communicate with you. And I think that's what's so lovely, and that's what makes the pairing work really, really well. And it's just so interesting listening to you talk actually about the process of making your crisp breads, because the parallels with cheese making really are amazing. And I think it's always worth remembering, and I always try and tell people, you know, what are we really looking at when we try and say, you know, what is the difference between an artisan cheese? Because artisan is a cheese that's used quite freely in certain areas. What is the difference between an artisan cheese and a more mass-produced cheese, like readily available in the supermarket or available on scale? And really, actually, when you think about it, it comes down to one core thing, and that thing is time and care. Because really what we're saying is that when you're making a mass-produced product, any product, not just cheese or crisp breads, you're looking at numbers on a spreadsheet, and you're saying, well, look, we can trade off a little bit of time here. It's going to get the product out quicker, and we can monetize and cash flow, and the accountants are happy, and shareholders are happy, and there's so many other things that are considered beyond just the product. Whereas when you look at cheeses like this, or products like the crisp breads, there's nothing else. We're just thinking about how to make this product the best it can possibly be. And that sometimes means that we get variation, we get change, we're a little bit different, a little bit imperfect. And things just take longer. But by God, are we rewarded for it at the end, you know?
And I think the other lovely thing, which I think you and I share in common, is that a cheese board put together well, with somebody having taken time in selecting them, taking time in selecting the accompaniments, and cheeses and products that have been developed with care and time, it actually makes you want to take time enjoying it and savouring it. And that means you don't rush it, and you really enjoy it, whether it's before or after a meal, or just as a meal on its own, in its own right. It's a conversation point, and you can really sit around and enjoy it. And gosh, aren't we all ready to do that with a good cheese board and some wine and lots of friends and family?
No, we are, and it's you're so right. It's so much more than just eating a piece of cheese and a bit of crisp bread. It's the story, it's the care, it's the craftsmanship, it's the skill that's gone into that moment, that's created that thing that's on your plate that you're now enjoying. There's like a series of decisions and processes that have led to this one moment, and it's just a much better experience when you think about things like that. You know, the person that was involved in that, rather than just, you know, some big kind of faceless product. It's just it's romantic. It is romantic.
No, I agree, and we haven't got time to cover it, but the Peter Jard name comes from Peter Lundqvist, who is a part of the team from Sweden, and I'm really delighted that the board that we've put together is available through your online shop and through ours as well, peterjard.com and thecheesegeek.com, and it's called the Peters. So look out for that, and it has tasting notes, as I said earlier, so anybody who hasn't had the chance to try it and wants to watch this back and try it with the product in front of them, then it's there for you to be able to buy. Edward, thank you so much for recommending those cheeses. We've had great fun matching them, haven't we, with the crisp bread. I've really enjoyed it. If anybody wants to delve a little bit deeper into even more pairings, excuse me, we have got a cheese pairing wheel on our website, which has all of the other types of cheeses and crisp breads that you can marry up. So that's there if anybody wants to experiment even further. But I've really enjoyed it. I hope everybody else has. And thank you very much.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Wendy. Thanks, everyone.